We're here, everybody. Video 16. Welcome back. Landman History Flip Classroom. The title of today's lesson is The Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists, ratification of the U.S. Constitution. So here you are. Let's get into the giddy up of what this lesson of government is all about. All right. So let's remember to use our template, making sure we use good strategies, meaning that we're processing, thinking, we're pausing the video if we need to, rewinding the video if we miss something, listening well, reading well, and coming up with those really great answers. You're doing a great job out there. Here's the vocabulary. Let's get those down on the left-hand side. I'm going to pronounce them one time here. Here we go. Vocabulary is tyranny, ratification, political parties, a bill, sworn, and rural. Now, we've used a few of these in past lessons, so we're going to use them a little bit again today. Grab them down. Here we go. Paused and ready to go. Question for the lesson. What are the differences in the beliefs between a Federalist and an Anti-Federalist? These are people. These are men, because this is part of the government lesson. So these are men in government. How did these two sides affect the outcome of the new U.S. Constitution? The Constitution, which we are studying currently, and we're getting into. It's such an important document because it affects all of our lives and how we live, these men. So let's rewind here just a little bit. Now, if you remember from our last lessons, in 1787, the delegates from the 12 out of 13 states meet in Philadelphia. Now, they wanted to fix the last government, the first government that they created, which was the AOC, or the Articles of Confederation. But remember, the AOC was very weak, and it was proving that it was not a positive influence over the direction of government in America. So these delegates decide to go forward with creating a new government instead of keeping the old one. And if you remember, there's that little teeny tiny state that decides that not to show up to the convention because they liked the AOC, and that was Rhode Island. And so now we're going to fast forward here just a little bit, because the convention is sort of wrapping up, and all the delegates are being in agreement to move forward with this Constitution. So we've had a lot of debates and discussions between these sides of men. Remember the differences between the plans, the New Jersey and the Virginia, and then of course the North and the South states, Northern and the Southern states had those issues that we talked about in class. Now, what we start to see is that these delegates are going to break up into what we call two political parties. Now, they will start to form up against each other in a really firm way. And so political parties are trying to gain power for their side, for the side of the people that they represent. So these political parties want to move their ideas forward. So we want to study these two parties that we're going to learn about. Now that the convention is over and wrapping up, remember they meet in 1787, so they agree in June of 1788 that the Constitution should be ratified by them. And so they're going to send the Constitution out to the states, meaning that the states, how many are there? 13, right? The 13 states need to approve this document. And by approval, they will accept it into America's unification of one government. So how many states needed to approve the Constitution? They needed, take a look at that circle, they needed 9 out of 13. And once those 9 states decided to ratify or accept the Constitution, then it became the law of the land. And now we have a new government. So here on the left, you see the signatures of the men on the Constitution who agreed to ratify it. And here on the right, you see a man, very serious looking gentleman, by the name of Elbridge Gerry. Now, despite the overall success of the Constitution, some of the delegates did not agree to sign the Constitution, and they felt that it was too powerful over its citizens, and this concerned them. And so when the Constitution was sent out for ratification, a couple of these men, including Elbridge Gerry right there, did not sign the Constitution in protest. They refused to participate in it, and they did not like what the Constitution was going to do, in their opinion. So where does this lead us to? Oh, real quick, ratification means to formally accept. So every time we're using that word in class, we're saying that the Constitution is being accepted or approved. So you got to remember, kids, that at the time, a lot of the citizens had this idea that the government could be very scary because remember, they're coming from England and they had that king that ruled them like a monarch, like very cruel. So there was a lot of tyranny in their minds that they were abused by. Tyranny means cruel rule or cruel, abusive rule. So the government to them seemed like this boogeyman that was going to kind of invade their lives and kind of hurt them and take away their rights. And people didn't like this idea. So that tyranny is playing in their minds, and you have to keep that in your head when we're learning this. So the Constitution gets ratified by sending it out to the states. So now the states have to have their own conventions. But when we get there, the conventions, some of the states start to agree, but a few people in those conventions, few delegates, start to wonder, well, why does this Constitution not have anything written where we see a Bill of Rights? A bill is a proposal. We don't see any proposal of rights. Where's the section on the rights of people? And see, that idea of tyranny starts coming back into their head. So they kind of start getting a little scared about this new Constitution being too strong and kind of evil to them. So when we see the political parties break up, we start to see the differences in their beliefs. Now we have here on the left, Mr. Alexander Hamilton, famous Federalist, and on the right we have Thomas Jefferson, the famous Anti-Federalist. Now, when we look at these two men, we see the embodiment of who these sides are. So Federalists are for the Constitution. Think about that, right? In class, simple way. Federalists are for the Constitution. So anti-Federalists are anti-Constitution. They're against the Constitution. So then what kind of government did they want? Well, anti-Federalists really liked the AOC. They liked the way that things were before, because remember, in the AOC, the kids had the control over the parents. The states had the control. And so they kind of like that. So Federalists for, Anti-Federalists against the Constitution. Now, this chart here is going to become really handy-dandy because we're going to see the core beliefs of the two sides. So let's review those sides and you get those answers on your chart. So Federalists obviously are for strong central government, meaning that they're for the Constitution. Anti-Federalist means against. Let's look at some other differences in their belief system. So the AOC, the Federalists didn't like it. They wanted to get rid of it because it was weak. The Anti-Federalists kind of liked the AOC because it gave power to the states. What other differences? So there we go, power to the states. So Federalists wanted control in the center, the government. So they wanted to limit the state's power so that individual little states, the 13, couldn't necessarily control the parent. So that means that the Anti-Federalists wanted the states to be stronger than the federal government. So they liked the AOC, remember? What else? Well, this is a big sticking point right here. The Bill of Rights, people's rights. Federalists didn't see a need to have to include any particular rights on the Constitution for people themselves. They just saw it as the Constitution would protect them. But the Anti-Federalists were very, very against this idea because they knew that they needed to see that list of rights, a Bill of Rights in that Constitution to protect everyone. And last but not least, their supporters. Who were the people that were representing, that were represented by them? Well, Federalists tended to be majority were wealthy and educated. Now that doesn't mean that there weren't others in there, but we kind of use this description to kind of give us a sense of who they were. So Federalists were fairly wealthy and educated, and it did include some common men, but Anti-Federalists were mostly small farmers. They were uneducated, a lot of these farmers, and they were kind of poor. They were rural, meaning that they were countryside. So Federalists tended to be found more in urban cities, and Anti-Federalists were more in the rural countryside areas. Okay, so now that the Constitution is sent out to the states, the Federalists decide, let's try to convince the people that the Constitution is safe. It's what we want. So we have the Federalist Papers. So the Federalist Papers were a series of essays that were written by three men, which you see there, Mr. Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. So these essays were going to create a purpose. And the purpose of these men writing the essays was to convince the public that the Constitution was good. It would protect them and create that strong central government. Remember the tyranny? Remember the fear? It wanted to give the people a sense that, hey, the Constitution is going to be a good thing and protect us all. And you don't have to worry about losing your rights. And so that idea is kind of there. Another purpose is going to be that they want the Constitution to prove that it's going to keep all of the government powers in check, and it's going to protect all the pieces of government and prevent one piece of government overcoming or overruling another. There's that idea of tyranny again. So the Federalist Papers definitely reflect the ideas that a strong central government would help all of America. Look at this quote here from James Madison from Federalist Paper number 51. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. Think about that. What is he trying to say about his belief when he calls, if men were angels, no government would be necessary? What is his message there to the people about men being angels and not needing government? It kind of reflects his idea that the Constitution is going to be a really, really important piece that's going to keep all of us as citizens in line and protect us with our own rights, and the government will keep working itself. So anti-federalists pop up. Now, anti-federalists are the opposite of the federalists. So the anti-federalists really fear a federal central national government, and they fear that it's going to take away people's rights. So they see there's that fear again of the tyranny. And so the anti-federalists are famous, like George Mason, Patrick Henry, Samuel Adams, but the most famous anti-federalist was Thomas Jefferson. Yes, he becomes the nemesis of Alexander Hamilton. Now, they were not sold on the idea of this Constitution, so they spoke out against the ratification, meaning that they didn't want the Constitution to be ratified initially. And so there was going to become this tug of war, this fight that's going to happen, this debate. So what did they want? Well, instead of having the power with the government, the federal government, the Anti-Federalists wanted power to be with the states. Remember, the kids were running the party in the AOC. So the Anti-Federalists wanted that power to stay with the states individually. So before the states could ratify the new Constitution, Anti-Federalists argued that the new government would not protect its citizens. Why? Well, because that Constitution to them represented a violation. It threatened the people of America because it did not protect them. And it didn't protect them because it wasn't giving them the rights listed in the document. So what did Anti-Federalists really want? Well, they wanted power to the states, but more importantly, they wanted power to the people in that list of rights. So what they wanted to see in the Constitution was a Bill of Rights, a list of individual rights. So the core difference starts to show itself between the two. The Federalists, they want powerful federal national central government. Hamilton, Madison, Jay. But the Anti-Federalists, and there you see Uncle Sam in the picture, right? Uncle Sam is the federal government. But the Anti-Federalists wanted power to the people, to the states. They wanted power in the individual to have more than the actual government. So they had to compromise. And they do get a compromise. A compromise is when they agree. So they agree to add a Bill of Rights when James Madison steps in and says, I'll get it done. And he works to get a Bill of Rights, a list of rights, and he gets both sides to agree. So the Anti-Federalists do ratify the Constitution. So the Constitution is accepted by the delegates. By 1791, the Constitution is ratified by 9 states. And so by this time, it becomes the law of the land. So what does this mean? It means that now we're having a government and now we're having a party because a new government is born. So the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists find that compromise. They get the Bill of Rights. They get their Constitution for their federal government. Boom, we've got a new country. So looking closely at this map, answer that question that I'm kind of putting on the chart there. And we'll look at the differences of how the beliefs of people are affected. And you can look at the green versus the yellow. Look at the green versus the yellow there, and you can see how the location of Americans really affects their beliefs at the time of federal government versus states, rights, people, power. Okay. So this leads us moving forward as a union, because by 1789, George Washington is sworn in to be the first president. That's right around the time that the Constitution is being created. So everything is working very beautifully towards a more perfect union. Listen, guys, you've been great. So I'll see you soon in class. Thanks for watching. All right.